Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Naruto Shippuden episode review. This one's going to be for episode 460, Kaguya Otsutsuki. And I really like the episode. I know a lot of people are going to straight away complain about it because it's, not canon, it's not directly continuing where the manga continues after last episode. But for me, this was really well done, non-manga material. And what I liked about it was that it straight away, just in this first episode, is giving us so much more of an insight into Kaguya than we had from the last episode. We now know a little bit about her, and I suppose the fact that she wasn't a villain from the beginning. Um, we still have to learn obviously a lot more about her, which I think this small backstory arc is only the next two episodes in addition to this one. So it's just going to be these three episodes, and then we're straight back to canon. But we'll be back to canon with a better insight into who Kaguya is and why she's doing what she's doing, which I think has kind of been an issue a lot of the fandom tends to talk about with her, that she's not the most developed character despite being an important historical figure in the Naruto universe. But yeah, let's get into talking about this episode specifically. Um, Straight away, just the idea of starting this episode off with the divine tree crashing down to earth and us seeing it basically just form there, and then the humans that we first see just talking about how it's just this legendary tree that, as far as they're aware, arrived millennia ago and just has grown and grown and grown to be as big as it is. But there are legends that if you try and go up close to it, a demon comes out and you're taken out basically. So that's pretty cool, and Kaguya seems to know a little bit about that. But the key part here, obviously, this being Kaguya's backstory, is that we get her arrival to Earth. And she decides that what she's going to do is protect the tree from something coming. Now that is very interesting, and I suppose it links into the Otsutsuki part of the fact that she's from that clan, and what exactly she's protecting it from. And that in itself is an interesting concept, because she's aware of the fact that if she eats the fruit, she gains a whole lot of power. So to some extent, that must have been potentially why she came there in the first place, to protect it from someone else eating it. But then she was forced to use it herself to obviously create in her mind a form of peace. Um, but before that, obviously, we get introduced to, I suppose, with basically the earliest human civilization in the Naruto world, as far as we're aware. Which is obviously, we have this idea of, again, it seems to be feudal lords, the land of Ka, the land of Sou, and ruled over by lords. So our kind of good nation that we cover here is the land of Sou, who's ruled over by Lord Tenji, who is this young-ish leader. He's definitely kind of, I suppose, early 20s, at most late 20s, and he's obviously ruling over this smaller land, and then the land of Ka is established to be the more powerful one, which is taking over surrounding areas, and they're at conflict with each other. And I even like the way they set up the land of Ka, as just they're saying they basically manufacture all of these little issues, and then kind of gradually force people into war so that they are the ones to start it rather than the land of Ka, so they feel justified in what they do. Just little scenes like them firing an arrow at those farmers, and the farmers basically wanted to defend themselves, but them kind of realizing no, they're just antagonizing us. They never wanted to kill us first. They just want us to be the ones to initiate this, and so they can feel justified with taking us over. But obviously, ultimately, what the land of Ka actually wants is that when they hear that the land of Sou has kind of taken in Kaguya, um, the one of their leaders obviously wants to take her as his own, because he's heard that she's beautiful, basically. So you have a bit of a kind of more creepy side to the villains here, and that they just want her because she's a beautiful woman. But as for, I suppose, the bonds that Kaguya kind of forms with the land of Sou, it's emphasized with two characters, of course. Her relationship with Lord Tenji, and then her relationship with Aino, who kind of looks after her and is her kind of, I wouldn't quite say servant, but she just helps Kaguya around the place. So that was kind of well done, in that Kaguya for the most part doesn't speak a ton in this episode, but she's still such an interesting presence on screen. Just the fact that Aino seems to very much respect Kaguya and like is very aware of kind of what Kaguya is doing. That Kaguya constantly looks out and stares up at the kind of heavens as if she's waiting for someone to arrive, and they constantly reference that something's gonna come, something's gonna come. She has to protect it. Um, but over time, she does develop a fairly close bond with Aino, and they also set up the fact that she forms a romantic relationship with Tenji, which eventually is revealed towards the end that Kaguya is in fact pregnant. So I think straight away one of the most interesting things I found about the episode was that we Kaguya seems to have powers, I suppose, before she eats the fruit, whereas, at least as far as I was aware, the story was that she eats the fruit and then she gains the power of chakra. Maybe I'm completely misremembering some stuff about the Otsutsuki clan, but I suppose I'm a little bit confused about that, in that maybe I have just missed something that, like, no, the Otsutsuki clan does have some form of power by default, but the divine fruit gives them kind of so much more extra power. Because the ability that Kaguya uses here, it seems like she has some level of chakra, but rather than obviously using it through ninjutsu as like a technique, it's more of just she's able to use a form of energy to defend herself, which she uses to block some arrows, to blow people up basically, which was really brutal. And that's another thing with this episode. It was surprisingly violent. Like the suddenness of so many characters getting killed by arrows was like really like shocking. Just like, oh wow, there is no ninjutsu here. There's no one just getting taken out with some kunai. Now some arrows are coming in at speed here, and especially the death of Aino and the impact that had on Kaguya. They definitely seem to almost emphasize that relationship more so than Kaguya's one with Tenji, in that when Kaguya has that emotional reaction to, Aino basically trying to defend her, trying to tell the Land of Sud not to keep firing, and she just keeps taking arrows and goes down. That was a really well done scene in terms of the emotional impact on it, in that it's already setting up like that is the key moment. Kaguya already was like for peace and didn't want war, but now she has this thing where like someone she was close to was killed because of war, was killed because of the kind of basically witch hunt against her, which I find a nice connection between Kaguya, like the second she displays her powers, instantly being turned on by like both sides. That the guy who initially wanted her because she was beautiful just thought of her as a monster once she displayed her powers. And then Tenji, of course, having committed to this idea where if we are the ones to kind of start a war, start a conflict, we will instantly execute the person who has done that, and obviously that's Kaguya here, and him having to stick to his word, obviously having heard about how powerful Kaguya is, and it's one of those ones where like you sort of respect Tenji for being a man of his word, but at the same time turning against this person who he has a romantic relationship with. It's a big move, and it shows you, I suppose, the start of why Kaguya is doing what she's doing, in that it's seemingly like she uses the infinite tsukuyomi here, the first mention of that we have, and it's not in this really villainous way. Like when Madara uses it, he uses it again to create peace, to stop the war that's going on right now. But there's an element of like he doesn't understand what he's doing. In this case, though, Kaguya is actually using the technique to stop a war and in her mind create peace, so that she can stop all these wars from happening, so she can focus on protecting the tree from anyone arriving. Um, Obviously it's maybe not the most ideal situation, but it's very understandable, I think, what she did. The emotional response, her friend Aino being killed so brutally by the people she trusted, under the orders of the person who's the father of her child, or children. And I think that's a very powerful emotional thing in this episode that, I think ultimately is kind of on the level of some of those more tragic backstories that we have that are people will consider canon. Um, And it was just, I think, really well done. You know, like they didn't emphasize or linger too heavily on her eating the fruit of the divine tree, and it just happens. She instantly gets the Rin of Sharingan and activates the infinite tsukuyomi. And the interesting thing, of course, being that in this case, the technique doesn't draw chakra out of people because people don't have chakra at this point in time. So it's not to supply some ultimate power. It is just a technique that basically puts people in a infinite dream. Um, and that she's not really drawing any energy out of anyone. She literally is just taking everyone out of action so she can focus on what she's doing. Um, Whereas obviously Madara in the previous episode kind of explained that, or Black Zetsu, I suppose, explained that the technique draws in all this chakra from people to resurrect Kaguya. So that's only like a secondary part of the jutsu. And I straight away like that comparison between the difference in the way Madara used it versus Kaguya using it, and it fit quite nicely. And I suppose just that moment at the end where she 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 is the one to very much hands on put Tenji into the infinite Tsukuyomi, while I suppose at the same time revealing to him her pregnant belly kind of sort of thing, and it being an emotional moment of just him realizing like how he kind of turned against her in the end, and now she's just set on ruling this world with her children and protecting the tree. But also it's showing that like she to some extent dislikes humanity because of their uh, tendency to go to war, but at the same time the reason she hates humanity is because humanity destroyed a bond that she has with a human. So that's another, I suppose, interesting layer to all of this, that I know is ultimately this key person who died and is kind of what drives some of Kaguya's actions. Now, obviously, the next two episodes I think are going to be very important in terms of further establishing some of the stuff with regards to why she was crying in the previous episode about her children turning against her, and the parts of the story that we know a little bit about, but we don't have the full details. So her then obviously having this betrayal of like the person she loved, and the people that she was sort of protecting herself turning against her, but now the children that she gave birth to are going to be the ones to kind of turn against her, and it's going to be interesting to see. I assume there's going to be maybe one or two decisions that she makes that are perhaps informed by like grief or something like that, that ultimately turn her into more of a villain, and that's why Hagoromo and Hamura turn against her, which is definitely going to be the most interesting thing in the next episode, getting to meet the Sage of Six Paths and Hamura at a younger age and see their interactions with their mother and how that happens. See like what they're going for here in terms of like how similar like these two characters are to other characters that we know about, and I suppose also see we might get the explanation perhaps in the next episode about the powers of the Otsutsuki clan, if they're naturally born with some or chakra, or or if like chakra is determining that they have powers now. In that, what is it the way it is? Hagoromo has the Rinnegan, and then Hamura is going to have the Byakugan. So maybe Kaguya will explain to them the fact that all the Otsutsuki members are born with a specific technique that they have initially, and then chakra gives them the ability to do more. And I suppose that's one thing we might get. Also, we might start to see Hamura and Hagoromo begin to use chakra through ninjutsu or ninshu or whatever you want to call it. So I think this little arc here, it's only going to be 3 episodes long as far as I'm aware. It's this episode and then the next two. And then we're straight back to canon, but obviously with that extra insight into Kaguya, the Sage of Six Paths, Hamura, and so on. And I assume Black Zetsu will come into play as well towards the end, and we'll find out about his creation. So overall, I think I've pretty much covered everything I want to here in this episode. Obviously, all the human characters that we got here are trapped in the Infinite Tsukuyomi, so I doubt we're going to see those villainous guys from the Land of Ka again. Tenji, I think might be referenced again, but I don't think we'll ever really kind of focus on him again. I think from here on out it's Kaguya and her children and that relationship, but while I think some people will not be happy that this episode is going away from canon, I think ultimately it is a excellent addition that will overall help the canon episodes once they do turn back, because it's one of those weird things where like most people that are really into the anime are kind of like, oh, I really want to see them adapt the manga, but if this part of the manga is a part of the manga that they kind of feel is underdeveloped, what is the problem with the anime adding that development? It's just kind of a double-edged sword of just like, okay, you can get the episodes you want, but they won't be as good as you expected because you don't like the source material in the first place. Or you can wait a little bit longer, get that development, and then get the episodes, but with better context and see it in an almost better way. Um, so yeah, that's been the review. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on this episode. Did you like this really heavy look back into like some early origins of the Naruto world, Kaguya, or are you one of those people who just want to get back to the canon episodes as soon as possible? But yeah, I really liked it, so that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.